The emergency alarm screamed through the Coalition Command Center, and Ambassador Vrex felt his blood turn cold in his veins. The screen showed the same nightmare that had haunted his sleep for weeks now. Red dots spreading across the star maps like a disease consuming everything in their path. The hive was coming and nothing could stop them. His people had tried everything they knew. Their weapons barely scratched the enemy ships. Their shields crumbled under the relentless assault. 3 entire star systems had gone dark in the last month, and millions of his people were dead or missing. The Kalari were a peaceful species, and they had lived in harmony with the galaxy for thousands of years. They built beautiful cities and created art that moved souls across 100 worlds. But they were not warriors, and now they were paying the price for their peaceful nature. Counselor Mira stood at the front of the emergency session, and her crystalline body flickered with colors that Vrex recognized as deep fear. She was from Zenthera Prime, and her people were even less suited for combat than the Kalari. The crystalline beings were philosophers and scientists who had unlocked secrets of the universe that others could only dream about. But all their knowledge meant nothing against an enemy that simply wanted to consume and destroy. The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, and all of them wore the same expression of hopeless terror. They had run out of options, and they all knew it. The combined fleets of 12 civilizations had failed to slow the hive advance. Every battle ended the same way, with coalition ships fleeing in disorder, while the insectoid swarm devoured another world. Mira raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. Her voice carried through the room like breaking glass, and every word cut deep into their hearts. We have one final option left to us, and I know it will frighten many of you. There is a species we have been monitoring for the past 20 years. They live on a world at the edge of known space, and they call themselves humans. Our exploration teams classified their planet as a Class 12 death world. Gasps and cries of alarm filled the chamber. A Class 12 world was the highest danger rating in the classification system. Most coalition species came from worlds rated Class 2 or maybe Class 3 at the most. A Class 12 world was a place where even breathing the air could kill most galactic citizens. The gravity alone would crush their bones, and the weather systems could level entire cities. The very thought of beings who evolved on such a nightmare world was terrifying. Vrex pulled up the classified files on his datapad and began reading with growing horror. Earth was a world of extremes where massive storms could span entire continents, and earthquakes could split the ground open. The planet was infested with millions of species of aggressive microorganisms that could kill in days or hours. The dominant species, called humans, had evolved as persistence hunters who chased their prey across vast distances until the animals literally died of exhaustion. They had survived ice ages and volcanic eruptions that would have ended most civilizations. Their bodies were built for violence, with dense bones and powerful muscles, and a nervous system designed for rapid combat responses. They healed from injuries that would kill most species, and they could survive in environments that were barely habitable. But the psychological profile was what truly frightened Vrex the most. Humans formed deep emotional bonds with other species, and they kept predators as pets in their homes. They willingly consumed poisonous substances for pleasure, and they injured themselves in organized sports for entertainment. They had nearly destroyed their own world with nuclear weapons during something they called the Cold War. They had fought countless wars among themselves with a creativity for violence that shocked the peaceful coalition observers. Yet somehow they had survived their own aggression and united their fractious governments into a single planetary authority. The assessment concluded that humans possessed an unusual combination of intelligence and controlled violence that made them potentially the most dangerous species ever encountered. Counselor Thek stood up with his feathers ruffling in agitation, and his voice was sharp with anger. This is absolute madness, and you all know it. Deathworlders are unpredictable and dangerous by their very nature. If we invite them into coalition space, we might be trading one nightmare for another. What if they help us defeat the hive and then decide they want to conquer us themselves? We would be defenseless against beings who evolved in hell itself. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The fear of humans was almost as strong as the fear of the hive. At least the hive was a known enemy with predictable behaviors. Humans were an unknown quantity, and their capacity for violence was legendary among the few coalition members who had studied them. Mira's crystalline form dimmed with profound sadness, and her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then we die and there is no other choice before us. The hive will reach our core worlds within 30 standard cycles at their current rate of advance. Our conventional forces cannot stop them because we are not built for war. We are builders and thinkers and artists. We create beauty and knowledge and peace. But the hive does not care about any of those things. They only understand strength and violence, and we have none to offer them. The humans are warriors by nature and by necessity. They have spent their entire history learning how to fight and survive against impossible odds. If anyone in this galaxy can stop the hive, it will be them. The vote was called, and Vrex watched as the results appeared on the main screen. The motion passed by the smallest possible margin. Half the council had voted against bringing humans into their space, but desperation had won over fear. Mira approached Vrex after the session ended, and her colors had shifted to a determined blue. You will be our ambassador to humanity, and you will convince them to help us. Your diplomatic skills are legendary throughout the coalition. If anyone can negotiate with Deathworlders, it will be you. Vrex felt the weight of billions of lives settling onto his shoulders. He nodded slowly and accepted the impossible task that had been given to him. The journey to the Sol system took 12 long days aboard the fastest ship in the coalition fleet. Vrex spent every waking moment studying everything available about humanity. He read their history and their literature and watched recordings of their strange violent sports. He studied their art and their music and tried to understand the contradictions that define them. They had created weapons capable of destroying their entire world, and yet they had also created beauty that moved him to tears. They waged terrible wars against each other, and yet they also showed compassion to their enemies. They were capable of both great cruelty and great kindness, often within the same individual. He had no idea how to approach such a paradoxical species. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, and immediately 6 human warships surrounded them. The response time was impressive and spoke to a military that was always ready for threats. A communication channel opened and a human voice spoke in clear tones. This is Captain John Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force, and you will state your identity and purpose immediately. Vrex took a deep breath and prepared to beg for help from the beings that terrified him almost as much as the hive itself. I'm Ambassador Vrex of the Galactic Coalition, and I come with a desperate request. Our civilization is dying and we have nowhere else to turn. Please help us. Captain John Hayes stood in the briefing room of the Orbital Defense Station and watched the live feed from the alien vessel with careful attention. Ambassador Vrex looked small and fragile on the screen, like a frightened child facing an impossible situation. The translation software was doing its best to convert the alien language, but some emotional nuances were getting lost in the process. Still, the desperation in his voice needed no translation at all. Hayes had seen that same look in the eyes of refugees fleeing war zones back on Earth. It was the look of someone who had lost everything and was clinging to one final thread of hope. The alien had transmitted detailed files about the threat his people, based in Hayes, had spent the last 6 hours reviewing every piece of data. General Lisa Martinez commanded all of Earth's defensive forces, and she stood beside Hayes, studying the tactical displays with a grim expression. The hive was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered before. The images showed massive insectoid creatures with natural armor plating and mandibles that could shear through steel like paper. Their ships were not built but grown from biological material that regenerated damage and adapted to threats. The swarm operated with a collective intelligence that coordinated millions of individual warriors across vast distances of space. They had overwhelmed 12 different species and consumed 3 entire star systems in just a few months. The numbers were staggering and the tactical implications were terrifying. The hive outnumbered the coalition forces by more than 50 to 1. And they showed no signs of slowing their advance. Secretary of Defense Henry Park leaned forward in his chair and tapped the datapad in front of him. We have 47 ships capable of deep space combat, and barely enough trained crews to operate them effectively. We have been a spacefaring civilization for less than 50 years, and most of our military doctrine is still theoretical. These aliens want us to fight an enemy that has defeated civilizations thousands of years older than ours. How exactly are we supposed to accomplish that miracle? Hayes pulled up the psychological profile that the coalition had included in their data package. They are terrified of us because they think Earth is some kind of death trap. Look at this classification system. They rate their own worlds at Class 2 or 3. Earth is rated Class 12, which is their highest danger category. They have been watching us for 20 years, but they never made contact. because they considered us too dangerous to approach. President Ellen Morrison entered the briefing room, and everyone stood immediately out of respect for her office. She waved them down with an impatient gesture and took her seat at the head of the conference table. I have read the complete briefing package and I understand the situation we are facing. The question is not whether we have the capability to help these aliens. The real question is whether we should help them at all. We have no treaty obligations to the coalition, and we owe them nothing. Why should we risk human lives for people who have been too afraid to even say hello to us? Admiral Kevin Ross brought up a holographic star map that showed the hive expansion in spreading red. If we do not help them, the hive reaches their core worlds in 30 days. After that, they will have consumed enough resources to become completely unstoppable. They will spread across the galaxy like a plague, and eventually, they will find Earth. The president studied the map carefully, and her expression grew more serious with each passing second. How long before they reach our space if we do nothing at all? 6 months at their current rate of expansion, and maybe 8 months if they stop to consolidate their territorial gains. But make no mistake, they will reach us eventually. The hive does not negotiate and they do not retreat. They consume everything in their path until there is nothing left to consume. Martinez nodded in agreement and highlighted several tactical points on the display. So we are not doing this out of charity or kindness. We are doing it because the hive is coming for us anyway. It is better to fight them now with allies at our side than to face them alone in 6 months when they are even stronger. We will be defending ourselves by defending the coalition. Secretary Park brought up another consideration that had been bothering him since the briefing began. There is also the matter of technology transfer to think about. The coalition has scientific advances that are centuries beyond our current capabilities. Their medical technology could cure diseases we consider terminal. Their energy systems could solve our power crisis. Their materials science could revolutionize manufacturing. If we help them survive this crisis, we gain access to knowledge that would take us hundreds of years to develop on our own. We would be making an investment in humanity's future. President Morrison looked around the table at her advisors and military commanders. I need an honest assessment from all of you. Can we actually make a difference in this war, or are we just throwing our people away in a noble but pointless gesture? Can we win? Hayes pulled up tactical simulations that his team had been running since they first received the data. The hive uses overwhelming numbers and aggressive assault tactics. They have never developed sophisticated strategy, because they have never needed to. Every enemy they have faced simply collapsed under the weight of the swarm. But the coalition species are not warriors by nature. They are scientists and diplomats and traders. They have weapons, but they do not have the mindset for war. They do not understand violence the way we do. Martinez finished his thought with a slight smile. But we do understand violence. We have been fighting wars against each other for 10,000 years. We know how to adapt our tactics. We know how to use terrain and logistics. We know how to turn enemy advantages into weaknesses. The hive has never faced an opponent that fights back with intelligence and determination. The president stood and walked to the window that looked down on Earth, turning slowly below them. When I took the oath of office, I swore to protect humanity and only humanity. I did not swear to protect alien species we have never even met before. But if we let the hive consume the galaxy, we are ultimately dooming ourselves to the same fate. And if we have the power to help people who are facing extinction, and we choose not to, then what does that say about who we are as a species? She turned back to face the room with her decision made. We help them, but we do it intelligently. General Martinez, you will command the expeditionary force. Take our best ships and our best crews. Captain Hayes, you will serve as military liaison with the coalition. Make sure they understand how humans operate and what they can expect from us. Admiral Ross, you will coordinate directly with Coalition Fleet Command and establish communication protocols. Secretary Park, you will begin immediate negotiations for technology transfer agreements. If we are going to risk human lives in this war, then we are going to get something valuable in return. Not payment, but partnership. She looked at each person in the room and her voice carried absolute authority. We are about to show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. Make every action count. The meeting ended and everyone filed out to begin preparations for war. Hayes remained behind and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was dying. Soon humanity would either save them or die alongside them. Hayes found Ambassador Vrex in the observation lounge several hours later. The small alien was staring at Earth with an expression the translator struggled to interpret accurately. It is beautiful, your world. From up here it looked so peaceful and calm. Hayes joined him at the window and looked down at the blue and white planet below. It can be peaceful, but it can also be violent and unpredictable and dangerous, just like the people who live on it. Vrex turned to face him directly. Your people frighten us, Captain. The psychological profiles suggest you are capable of terrible violence. Yet you have chosen to help us despite having no obligation to do so. Why would you risk your lives for strangers? Hayes considered the question carefully before answering. Because violence is not evil in itself. It is just a tool, and like any tool, it depends entirely on how you use it. We have spent 10,000 years learning to control violence and direct it and use it when absolutely necessary. The Hive is coming for your people, and eventually, they will come for us. It makes sense to stop them together while we still can. Vrex nodded slowly. Then you will truly help us. We will help you, but you need to understand something important. The way we fight will probably shock you. We are not going to meet the Hive in honorable battle. We are going to hit them hard and fast and dirty. We will use every advantage we can find and exploit every weakness and show absolutely no mercy. Until they are completely broken. Vrex was quiet for a long moment. Do whatever you must, Captain. Just please save my people. The human fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system, in a formation that spoke of careful planning and military precision. 47 warships ranging from massive carriers to nimble destroyers represented the absolute best of human engineering. Each vessel had been designed through centuries of theoretical warfare and refined during decades of uneasy peace. The crews were the finest Earth had to offer, with training that pushed them far beyond normal human limits. General Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of her flagship Indomitable and watched as her fleet took final formation positions. Beside her, Commander Sarah Lee coordinated the last-minute preparations with calm efficiency. The Coalition had provided jump coordinates to their defensive line at a star system they called Kepler. Intelligence reports indicated the Hive was launching a major assault there, and Coalition forces were barely holding the line. All ships report ready for jump, Commander Lee announced. The fleet is at your command, General. Martinez opened a communication channel that connected her to every ship and every crew member in the expeditionary force. This is General Martinez speaking to all ships and all personnel. Today we begin humanity's first real test as a spacefaring civilization. We go to war not for conquest or resources, but to defend those who cannot defend themselves. The enemy we face is powerful and numerous and completely relentless. They have defeated every military force sent against them, but they have never faced human warriors. They have never faced people who were forged in the harsh conditions of a death world. They have never encountered an enemy that simply refuses to quit no matter how bad things. Yet we are the descendants of persistence hunters who walked out of Africa and conquered an entire planet through sheer determination. We are the children of Earth, and we do not break easily. All ships execute jump sequence on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. Space folded around the fleet and reality twisted in ways that human minds could barely comprehend. For a brief moment they existed everywhere and nowhere. Then they emerged into chaos and violence beyond anything they had imagined. The Kepler system was under full assault by millions of Hive warriors. Coalition ships scattered in all directions as biological horrors pursued them through space. Elegant alien vessels were being torn apart by creatures that should not exist. The Hive warriors swarmed through the void like locusts, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of a collective intelligence beyond individual thought. Commander. Lee pulled up tactical displays that painted the situation in stark terms. Coalition forces are in full retreat. The Hive has breached the inner defense perimeter. Sensors detect approximately 40 million hostile units in the immediate combat zone. 40 million enemies, Martinez repeated with a calmness that surprised even herself. Then we better start working. All ships implement battle formation Delta. Target command organisms first. Hit them with maximum firepower. The human fleet moved forward with practiced precision that contrasted sharply with the chaotic Coalition retreat. Unlike the alien vessels that fled in panic, the human ships advanced directly into the heart of the swarm. The Hive barely registered the new arrivals as a threat until the first human weapons struck with devastating force. Human weapons were fundamentally different from anything the Hive had encountered before. Coalition technology relied on elegant energy weapons that were efficient and precise. Human weapons were brutal and excessive and designed with one purpose: to destroy the enemy as thoroughly as possible. Railguns launched tungsten slugs at speeds approaching a fraction of light speed. Nuclear missiles carried warheads that could vaporize entire city blocks. Plasma cannons turned space itself into a superheated inferno. The first volley tore through the hive formation like a knife through silk. Command organisms that coordinated sections of the swarm exploded in bursts of biological matter. Suddenly, leaderless thousands of hive warriors faltered and lost their coordinated movement. Martinez watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. All fighters launch immediately. Show them what close combat truly means. Lieutenant Jake Morrison led his fighter squadron out of the carrier bay and into the swarm without hesitation. His small craft was packed with enough firepower to level a city, and behind him 50 other pilots followed in perfect formation. The hive warriors turned to meet this new threat with their living ships pulsing with hostile energy. But where coalition pilots would have broken formation and fled the human fighters, dove straight into the enemy formation. Morrison's targeting computer lit up with so many hostile contacts that it nearly overloaded. He fired and his plasma cannons tore through 3 hive warriors in rapid succession. All wings break formation and attack independently. Go loud and fast and make every shot count. The human fighters scattered in a pattern that looked chaotic, but was actually carefully calculated. Each pilot engaged multiple targets simultaneously using momentum and speed to turn their smaller size into a tactical advantage. They flew through debris fields that would have destroyed coalition vessels and used the wreckage as both cover and weapons. Lieutenant Amy Chen executed a perfect barrel roll that brought her underneath a hive ship. She unleashed her full missile payload at point-blank range and the biological vessel exploded in a shower of organic matter. Chen was already moving toward her next target before the debris stopped flying. Morrison watched his pilots work with fierce pride. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but they fought with a ferocity that the hive had never encountered. The insectoid warriors were evolved to overwhelm and consume prey that fled before them. They had no tactical framework for dealing with prey that fought back with such savage determination. The human fighters were not prey at all. They were predators, and they hunted with ruthless efficiency. Ambassador Vrex watched the battle from the Coalition command ship, and his disbelief grew with every passing moment. The humans were not simply fighting the hive. They were actually winning against impossible odds. Counselor Mira stood beside him with her crystalline form flickering through colors that indicated profound shock. They fight like nothing we have ever witnessed before. They are using the hive's own numbers against them, creating choke points and kill zones, turning the density of the swarm into a weakness rather than a strength. Captain Hayes joined them on the observation deck with his expression carefully neutral. My people call it combined arms warfare. We learned thousands of years ago that different weapon systems work together far better than they work separately. Our capital ships eliminate command structures. Our fighters exploit the resulting confusion. Our missiles create denial zones that force enemy movement. Every piece of our military supports every other piece in a coordinated whole. But the cost, Vrex said quietly as he watched a human destroyer take catastrophic damage while protecting a coalition refugee ship. You are losing vessels and crew. So many lives being spent. Hayes' expression grew grim. War always has a price, and we understand that better than most species. But we pay that price because the alternative is far worse. Besides, we are stubborn by nature. We do not know when to quit, and we refuse to accept defeat. On the tactical display, General Martinez's voice came through with absolute clarity. All ships press the attack forward. Do not give them any time to regroup or reorganize. Hit them continuously until they break completely. The human fleet surged forward into the swarm. Weapons firing in continuous barrages. Ships taking damage but refusing to retreat. Fighters diving through enemy formations with reckless courage. The hive had consumed dozens of species across hundreds of worlds, but they had never faced anything like this. The coalition forces watched in amazement as the human fleet carved through millions of hive warriors. The insectoid swarm that had seemed unstoppable was actually retreating. Sections of the hive formation collapsed as command organisms were systematically destroyed. Individual warriors lost their coordination and became easy targets. The tide of battle shifted in a matter of hours. What had seemed like certain defeat became a stunning victory. The Kepler system was saved, and the hive suffered their first major loss. Martinez surveyed the damage reports with a mixture of pride and sorrow. They had won, but the cost had been significant. 3 ships destroyed, 2 more badly damaged. Hundreds of crew members killed or wounded. But they had proven something crucial. The hive could be beaten. Humanity could make a difference. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the coalition had real hope. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks into the campaign, and the war had transformed into something neither side had anticipated. The hive that had grown accustomed to easy victories now found themselves facing an enemy that would not break no matter how much pressure was applied. Every star system they attacked became a killing ground. Every advance met with calculated and brutal resistance. General Lisa Martinez stood in the war room aboard the Indomitable, studying reports from battlefronts across dozens of star systems. The tactical map showed a complex pattern of advances and retreats. The hive still possessed overwhelming numerical superiority, but their relentless advance had completely stopped. In several key sectors, they were actually falling back and regrouping. This was unprecedented behavior for a species that had never retreated before. Commander Sarah Lee highlighted critical battle zones on the holographic display. The hive is fundamentally changing their tactical approach, General. They are no longer committing to massive frontal assaults. Instead, they are probing our defensive lines and searching for weaknesses to exploit. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. They are learning and adapting, which is actually a positive sign for us. It means we are hurting them badly enough that they must change or die. The question now becomes whether they can adapt faster than we can counter their adaptations. Captain Hayes entered the war room accompanied by Ambassador Vrex and several high-ranking coalition military commanders. The alien officers still appeared somewhat uncomfortable around humans, but necessity had forged an unlikely but effective cooperation between the species. Admiral Thorin, who commanded coalition forces from the Sethian species, approached the tactical display. General Martinez, the Coalition Council wishes to formally thank humanity for its remarkable assistance. You have achieved in mere weeks what we could not accomplish in months of desperate fighting, but we now face a troubling new development that threatens everything. Thorin pulled up detailed sensor readings from forward observation posts. The hive has begun evolving entirely new warrior forms. These creatures are specifically designed to counter human tactics. They possess thicker armor plating to resist kinetic weapons, faster neural responses to match human fighter pilots, enhanced sensory organs to detect stealth approaches. They are adapting to us at the biological level. Martinez studied the biological data with interest rather than concern. Real-time evolutionary adaptation is fascinating from a scientific perspective, but evolution requires time and multiple generations. We can adapt our tactics and weapons far faster than they can evolve new biological traits. She turned to her staff officers. Commander Lee, coordinate immediately with our Research and Development Division. I want new weapon configurations ready for deployment within 1 standard week. If they are developing thicker armor, we will design bigger guns with more penetrating power. If they are getting faster, we will deploy area denial weapons that do not require precision targeting. But more importantly, we need to understand their command and control structure at a deeper level. Admiral Thorin, your people have been studying the hive far longer than we have. How exactly do they organize and coordinate themselves across such vast distances? Thorin's expression showed deep concern. Our xenobiologists have developed a theory based on observed behavior patterns. We believe there exists a central intelligence that coordinates the entire hive collective across light years of space. We have designated this entity as the Queen Mind. If we could locate it and destroy it, the entire hive might collapse into individual organisms without coordination. Hayes leaned forward with sudden interest. That represents a significant strategic vulnerability. Where would something like that be located? Ambassador Vrex pulled up a star chart that showed hive expansion patterns over time. Our scientists believe the Queen Mind must be positioned at the geometric center of their expansion pattern. By analyzing the timing and direction of initial attacks, we can triangulate the probable location. That places it somewhere in this region, which we call the Void Sector. The Void Sector was a region of space that was notably empty of stars and planets, dark and cold and essentially lifeless. It was the perfect hiding place for something you never wanted discovered. Martinez stared at the empty region on the map for several long minutes. To reach the Void Sector, we would need to punch directly through the entire hive fleet. Even with our superior tactics, the casualties would be absolutely catastrophic. Lee pulled up probability projections that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Current tactical models estimate we would lose 80% of our forces before reaching the target zone, and that optimistic estimate assumes we can actually locate the Queen Mind once we arrive there. The room fell into heavy silence. No commander wanted to order what amounted to a suicide mission. But everyone present understood the brutal mathematics of attrition warfare. If they did nothing, the hive would eventually grind them down through sheer weight of numbers. Captain Hayes spoke quietly into the uncomfortable silence. There might be another tactical approach worth considering. We do not need the entire fleet to reach the void sector. We only need a small and fast strike force, something that can slip through Hive defensive lines while the main fleet creates a massive diversion elsewhere. Martinez looked at him with immediate understanding. A decapitation strike against their command and control. Extremely high risk, but if it succeeds, we could end this entire war in a single operation. Thorin's eyes widened in his alien face. You would actually attempt such a desperate mission. It is almost certainly a suicide run. Hayes smiled grimly. Almost certain death still represents better odds than guaranteed defeat through slow attrition. Besides, humanity has a long and proud history of pulling off supposedly impossible victories. We like to think it has become our specialty. Over the following week, humanity prepared for their most audacious military operation in history. A strike force consisting of 12 ships was carefully selected. They were the fastest and most advanced vessels in the entire human fleet. Meanwhile, the main fleet would launch a massive offensive operation designed to draw maximum Hive attention away from the strike force approach vector. Captain Hayes volunteered to lead the strike mission. His combat experience and tactical record made him the logical choice. Lieutenant Jake Morrison and Lieutenant Amy Chen were selected to command the fighter escort. Commander Lee would coordinate the main fleet diversionary attack from the Indomitable. The night before the operation, crews gathered in mess halls across the fleet. There was no false optimism or pretending the mission was anything other than what it truly was. But there was also no hesitation. Every single person had volunteered, knowing full well they might not return. Hayes stood before his strike force crew, looking at faces that had become family over years of training and service together. Tomorrow we attempt something that probably should not work according to any reasonable tactical analysis. But if humanity has proven anything throughout our long history, it is that we specialize in accomplishing the supposedly impossible. The Hive thinks they understand us now. They think they have figured out how humans fight and how we think. Tomorrow we show them they understand absolutely nothing about us. We show them that humanity does not surrender under any circumstances. We do not give up when things get difficult. And we absolutely do not go quietly into extinction. Ambassador Vrex, who had insisted on joining the strike force despite numerous protests, stood and raised his drinking container. To humanity, the Deathworlders who came when we called for help, may your fierce and unconquerable spirits guide us through the darkness that lies ahead. The entire room stood as one and echoed his words. To humanity, they would attempt the impossible and perhaps they would succeed. Or perhaps they would die trying. But either way, the galaxy would remember what humans had done. The main human fleet launched their attack precisely at dawn according to Galactic Standard Timekeeping. General Lisa Martinez led 40 ships in a direct and aggressive assault against the Hive's strongest defensive position. It was not subtle and it was not particularly clever tactics. It was exactly the kind of brazen frontal assault that the Hive had learned to expect from human forces. The Hive responded with overwhelming force exactly as the humans had predicted. They pulled reserve units from across their entire territory to meet what appeared to be humanity's final desperate offensive. Millions of warriors swarmed toward the engagement zone, and the resulting battle became the single largest space combat operation in recorded galactic history. The human fleet fought with desperate fury as ships pushed their systems far beyond safe operational limits. They needed to hold the Hive attention for as long as possible, while the strike force made their run toward the void sector. Commander Sarah Lee coordinated the massive fleet action from her position aboard the Indomitable. 3 ships lost completely, she reported to Martinez with grim efficiency. The destroyer Relentless has suffered catastrophic power system failure. The carrier Defiance is venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. But our defensive line is holding and the Hive is fully committed to this engagement. Martinez's voice remained steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Keep maximum pressure on them. Every minute we hold their attention here gives Captain Hayes another minute to reach his objective. Make every sacrifice count for something. While the main battle raged across multiple cubic light-years of space, Captain Hayes led his strike force on a desperate sprint through Hive-controlled territory. 12 ships moving at absolute maximum velocity with all stealth systems engaged. They were racing against time and probability, and the laws of chance that said they should not survive. They encountered Hive patrol groups 3 separate times during their approach run. Each encounter was brief and violent and costly. 2 ships were destroyed in the first engagement, when they were forced to break stealth to return fire. Another ship took critical damage in the second encounter and had to turn back toward Coalition space. By the time they reached the edge of the void sector, only 9 ships remained operational from the original 12. Lieutenant Jake Morrison flew fighter escort with his squadron reduced to just 30 functional craft from the original 50. The darkness of the void sector stretched before them like an open mouth, empty of stars but filled with something else. A presence that pressed against his mind like physical weight. It felt malevolent and aware and utterly alien to anything humanity had encountered before. Captain's sensors are detecting something absolutely massive directly ahead, Morrison reported. The readings do not match anything in our databases. It registers like a small planet. But the composition is completely wrong. Hayes studied the incoming sensor data and felt his blood run cold in his veins. It was not a planet at all. It was a living organism of incomprehensible size, larger than some moons humanity had mapped. Just floating in the empty void of space like a nightmare given physical form, the Queen Mind. Ambassador Vrek's voice was barely above a whisper. By all the stars in the galaxy, it is simultaneously beautiful and absolutely terrifying. The Queen Mind became aware of their presence and space around the strike force erupted with defensive organisms. Bioships of truly terrifying size and complexity materialized from the darkness. These were not standard hive warriors. These were guardian creatures evolved specifically to protect the heart of the entire swarm. All ships' weapons free. Hayes ordered with a calmness that seemed almost casual. Hit the Queen Mind with absolutely everything we have brought. The human ships opened fire simultaneously in one devastating coordinated barrage. Nuclear missiles each carrying megatons of destructive potential. Railgun slugs moving at relativistic velocities. Plasma beams hot enough to vaporize solid steel instantly. Every weapon system humanity had developed over centuries of theoretical warfare, unleashed in a single concentrated attack. The Queen Mind defensive organisms attempted to intercept, but there were simply too many projectiles moving far too fast. The first impact sent massive shockwaves rippling through the creature's enormous body. Biological armor that was meters thick cracked and ruptured under the assault. But the Queen Mind was not defenseless. Tendrils of pure energy lashed outward, catching one human ship and crushing it like a fragile insect. Bioweapons fired with each shot powerful enough to punch completely through military-grade shielding. Lieutenant Amy Chen led her fighter squadron in a suicidal dive directly toward the Queen Mind massive surface. They were searching for weak points and vulnerable areas in the creature defenses. She found what appeared to be sensory organs. Massive biological structures that pulsed with alien awareness and bioluminescent energy. Her entire squadron concentrated their fire and the organs exploded in spectacular bursts of glowing fluid. Morrison followed her tactical lead with his remaining pilots coordinating their attacks instinctively. They had trained together and fought together for years. Now they moved with the precision of a single unified organism. Where the Queen Mind expected chaos and panic, they brought coordinated order. Where it expected fear and retreat, they brought focused fury and determination. The Queen Mind screamed, but not with sound. It released a psychic wail that rippled through space itself like a shock wave. Across the entire galaxy, every single hive warrior felt their central intelligence dying in agony. The coordination that had made them completely unstoppable began to fracture and fail. Back at the main battle, Commander Lee watched in stunned amazement as the hive forces suddenly faltered in mid-attack. The perfectly coordinated swarm fractured into confused individual organisms. The tide of battle reversed itself in mere moments. General Martinez immediately recognized what was happening. All ships press forward aggressively. They are losing coordination. Do not allow them time to regroup or adapt. The human fleet surged forward with renewed determination. The hive warriors, suddenly leaderless, began fleeing in random directions. Some tried to continue fighting on pure instinct alone. But without the Queen Mind coordination, they stood no chance against human tactical superiority. In the void sector, Captain Hayes watched the Queen Mind die slowly. The massive organism convulsed as its biological systems failed sequentially. The defensive organisms fell silent and drifted through space like abandoned vessels. Victory had been achieved, but the price was devastating. Of 12 ships that entered the void sector, only 4 remained combat capable. 2 more were barely functional, with crews working desperately just to maintain life support systems. The fighter squadrons had been decimated with only 15 pilots surviving from the original 100. Hayes opened communication channels to all surviving vessels. All ships begin withdrawal procedures immediately. Mission is complete. We are going home. As they slowly turned away from the dying Queen Mind Ambassador, Vrex stared at the view screen with profound awe, mixed with deep sorrow. You actually accomplished it. Against all probability, you succeeded. But the cost in lives. Hayes' voice carried the weight of command and the burden of survivor guilt. War always demands a terrible price, Ambassador. We just try to ensure that the sacrifice means something important. The war ended not with a dramatic final battle, but with a quiet dissolution of enemy forces. Without the Queen Mind, the Hive warriors became scattered and uncoordinated. Some fled into deep, unexplored space. Others were captured by coalition forces. A few even became docile as their aggressive instincts faded, without central guidance directing them. The coalition worlds erupted in celebrations that lasted for weeks. Entire civilizations that had faced imminent extinction found themselves saved by the Deathworlders they had once feared. Humans were no longer viewed as dangerous curiosities but as saviors and trusted allies. But humanity did not celebrate their victory. They mourned their losses. Of 47 ships that departed Sol system, only 24 returned home. Thousands of crew members had sacrificed their lives. Entire families received notifications that their loved ones would never come home. 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador Vrex returned to Earth. He found Captain Hayes in the garden of the human embassy, carefully tending flowers. The image struck him as impossibly contradictory. This warrior who led the most desperate military assault in history, now gently watering delicate plants. Captain Hayes Vrex said quietly, "The Coalition Council has formally ratified our alliance treaty. Humanity is now a full member with all rights and privileges. All our technology and resources are available to your people." Hayes smiled while setting down his watering container. "We did not fight for technology or political advantage. We fought because it was the right thing to do. When someone asks for help, you help them if you possibly can." Vrex touched one of the flowers gently. "When we first encountered humanity, we were terrified of you. Your violent history suggested you were dangerous beyond measure. We did not understand how you could be both brutal and compassionate." Hayes looked up at the sky where coalition and human ships moved together in orbit. "That is what being from a death world teaches you. Life is precious because it is fragile, and survival requires both strength and friend."